Conversations on the Rocks, the podcast where the drink is strong and the stories are stronger. I'm your host, Kristen Dokas, and this isn't your average chat fest. Here, real people spill the tea alongside their favorite drinks, from the hilarious to the heart-wrenching. Each episode, a wild card. You'll laugh, you may cry, but you'll definitely learn something new. So grab whatever wets your whistle and buckle up. It's time to dive into the raw, the real, and the ridiculously human. Let's get this chat party started. Hey everybody, it's Kristen Dokas, and we're back with another episode of Conversations on the Rocks. And today, I'm with Dorien Morin Van Dam, one of my very old, she's not old, but we've been friends for a really long time. And Dorien, will you just introduce yourself a little bit, and then we're going to dive into this topic because we got a lot to go over and a 30-minute segment. So have at it.
Sure, absolutely. I was born and raised in the Netherlands, immigrated at age 18 by myself, married young, married an American. I immigrated from the Netherlands and raised 4 children, was a stay-at-home mom, and at age 40 started my business. That's where I met Kristen about 13 years ago, 13 years ago. And I am a runner. I have a bunch of dogs. My children are now aged 27 to 19. So, they're young adults, not teenagers anymore. That phase lasted forever. And I like to, I know. So I've morphed from a social media manager into a social media strategist and consultant. So that's what I do. Run my own business and work full time and loving it.
So you and I both have young adult children, and all but one of yours and all of mine have left the nest. I am an empty nester, and you are 75% of an empty nester.
50.
Did we have another boomerang?
I've had 2 boomerangs already. Now I have 2 at home. One, a young adult, is at home because of a disability, and then one is at home. He's a teenager. He's a 19-year-old, but he goes to college. He lives at home. Right. He's a commuter.
Right.
So he basically lives there, but he just sleeps here.
And that is Generation Z, for those who may not be in tune with all the generations. And obviously, Dorien and I are Gen X. And it's interesting and very challenging. And so we want to kind of dive into the challenges, not just that we face, but that they are facing. Particularly the differences, because you married young, right? I married a little older than you, but I was out on my own by the time I was 20. And I came from that generation of, once you left the house, you were gone. There was no boomeranging going on with the boomer generation. And it was tough. But I cannot say that it's nearly as tough for me, or it was as tough for me as it is for our kids. And whether it's the economics piece of, I did read something not too long ago. I don't know if you saw the same study, that something crazy high, like 65% of parents are supporting in some capacity their adult children up to and over the age of 30, whether that looks like helping them out with rent, helping them out with other bills, helping them out with food, something. What has been your experience with the 2 that are, or even, what has been your experience with your kids after they have left?
Yeah, so 2 of them boomeranged back, one after college when we moved from South Carolina to Vermont. So he finished college right at the time that we moved. So he decided that he was going to check out Vermont and live with us for 7 months. He moved back right before COVID hit. And then the other one was in college and boomeranged during college because she was kicked out of the dorm and had to come live with us for a year before she moved back to college, and then eventually got married. She got married young. But yeah, the experience is that we've told them, if you need support, we see how hard it is. So they know to ask for the things that they need. We carried, our oldest is 27. We carried him on our health insurance till we couldn't anymore, till he was 26. And something that I want to touch on right now that I think you were going to bring up anyway is that, he got a college education, but right now he's working 2 labor-intensive jobs. He's not really working in what he studied. He's a degree in biology and chemistry. And he doesn't want to work inside, decided that he wants to work outside. He works on the beach, works at a horse farm, and loving the work that he does. But, that doesn't necessarily give you a lot of stability. And they're seasonal jobs, both of them. But he's happy. And the advice that we gave him, 10 years ago and that we were expected to give is go to college. And he's said to us, if I were to do it again, I wouldn't go to college. But then that's also where all his friends have come from. That's where he became an adult. He moved out at 18. He told us afterwards, it was so funny. We drove him to college and he didn't go into the dorm. He went to College of Charleston where there's a shortage of dorm rooms anyway. So they allow freshmen to live off campus, even as freshmen. Right. And so he thought we were going to give him a wad of cash, even though we said, you're on your own. We won't pay for college. You have to figure it out. You saved during high school. You got scholarships. You got to work in college and we can't help you. And he really thought that we were going to drop him off and give him a couple of $1,000s, and we didn't. And so he had to figure it out.
I think a lot of that too, and I've got a funny story for you that just happened to me last night talking about, because again, you and I are so similar in our personalities, especially when it comes to parenting, and other parent peers literally have made our job very difficult. In the sense of it makes us tease us up to be kind of the bad guy, right? And and last night I got a text from my oldest and she said, have you guys been saving for our weddings? And I was like, no, we haven't. And she's like, well, who's going to pay for my wedding? And I'm like, I'm going to say that's probably you. I said, my parents didn't pay for my, those are the two things too. They didn't pay for my college. They didn't. So I didn't go to college, right? I don't have a degree, and they didn't pay they paid for a little bit of my wedding, right? But that expectation from Gen Z is that we're just throwing out money right and left. And I'm like, I don't know. It's sometimes with her, especially, I look at her and I go, have you not lived with us for 26 years? Like, at which point of your growing up did you ever see us with, wads of cash that we were just throwing to you guys? Like, we can help you when we can. It's kind of going back to how expensive it is. And, with her, I made the commitment to her just to help her get in a little bit better of an area in Washington, D.C. I said, I will commit to giving you $200 a month. And I said, it's not a ton. But, it's something that you can count on. And she's like, I don't want your money. I said, but if I put it in my budget, then I know, right? And so that helped her. I mean, even just $200 a month can help get them to a better place, right? But yeah, I was like, no, we have not saved for your wedding. We are not paying for your wedding. I said, I would. So let's go ahead and hopefully you can set your expectations now if and when you decide to finally get married. But, looking at, and I remember when she turned, and it was something about her class. It was that her class of 2017. All of the kids in that class were overindulged. Like when they turned 16, there were more brand new, and I'm not talking just cars. I'm talking like Beamers, Porsches, Jeep Wranglers. I mean, you name it, it was sitting in that parking lot with the keys in the hands of 16-year-old kids.
Do you think it's because we both lived in the South at that? My son graduated 2017 as well, and we lived in South Carolina. I know you're in North Carolina. I don't know if it was because of where we lived. I do think there's a different lifestyle there and expectations. And then that's a funny story about your daughter asking. When our daughter got married, she had a wedding, just the two of them plus the two sets of parents. But our kids know our story. My husband and I got married at the bus stop. So we paid a justice of the peace $175 to show up. We rented 2 limousines and we drove around with our friends. We weren't old enough to drink, so we couldn't go to a bar or anything. We were both under 21 when we got married. And we didn't go on a honeymoon. I think my husband's sister got us a night at a hotel, and that's all we spent. And then say about 10 years later, we were invited to be in a wedding. We spent more on somebody else's wedding, being the bridesmaid and the best man, than we did on our own wedding. And so our kids have known that story, and they know it's not about the wedding.
Right.
It's about the marriage. And I think that, that philosophy has, trickled through to everything that as parents that we've tried to teach our children. Those things fade. When my son went to college in that same truck when we driving him, when he's thinking we're going to hand him a bunch of cash, I also asked him, I said, you're now an adult, you're going out on your own. What are your best memories of childhood? And he said, our 4-month trip to Brazil, our 4 months living in the Netherlands, because they went to school with their cousins, driving up to Westfield, Massachusetts, and seeing snow. It was all about experiences. He didn't, and birthday parties. We always had incredible birthday party experiences. Nothing that I hired somebody for $1,000 to come in and entertain the kids.
Right.
We did, Survivor games and, Olympics on the beach. And he said it was the experiences that he remembered, not the things that he got.
Yeah.
So if you're listening as a parent, that's what your kids will remember. It's about how it made them feel.
And that's something I've tried to pass on to my kids too, as far as, to pull away from the monetary piece of it, or actually especially when it comes to travel. And for some reason, and I don't know why I keep throwing my oldest, it's not I'm throwing her under the bus, but it seems like I have more examples there. But for her 21st birthday, she wanted to go to California with her friends. But she was worried about how much it was, because California's not cheap, right? And she was worried about spending the money. And I said, you can always make more money. You can always replace your money. You can't replace the experience, right? So I've always tried to be very experience driven with them. And, same thing, as far as did each of them have a brand new car? Absolutely not. But we did our damnedest to, have really great experiences with them, whether it was a cruise or whether, big things like that. I would just rather spend my money on something. And I have been trying for the past 5 years to get rid of Christmas. And I think this year is going to be the year because we're taking that cruise to Greece. And I'd rather take whatever month. I'm like, tell me what you got last year. Tell me what you got for Christmas. Like, not you, but, to them, tell me all the things and they can't tell you, right? However, if you do a trip, they'll be like, oh yeah, remember that time we did blah, 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 blah. How did you work with your kids to be good financial stewards, to make them how did you train them fiscally? Okay. So my oldest was born in 1996. So he's right on the cusp of millennial Gen Z. I think that's yes. Right on that edge. So when all my kids turned 13, I got them a bank account under my bank account. So they got a debit card. And so that was one of the things I did. So they could see how much all their money had to go through it. If they made money from babysitting or whatever, it had to go in there first, and then you can use it. So I didn't want them to use cash. I wanted them to see it on there so it was registered. And then, so that was one of the things I did with each one of them. The other thing I did is I paid my children for babysitting, especially my oldest two, for babysitting the younger ones. I was able to start a job and start a business because they were able to babysit and help me with that. But I also made them pay for things like their phone. So my son would babysit his younger siblings. I would give him $5 an hour. So maybe I was on the job for 4 hours. I was merchandising. And I would literally pay him every day, right? It's payday. Every day's payday. You just did this. Here's your money. Wow. Talk about setting a standard that's unrealistic in the real world.
Right. But as a 13-year-old, leaving him alone, right, making lunch for his siblings, it was so then I would give him the cash and he would go to his room and he knew he had to put it like through the bank, but he would be sitting in his room and sometimes he'd say, okay, I'm going to spend this on my phone, like on minutes on my phone. Or sometimes he'd be like, oh, I think I'm going to go to the mall with my friends and buy a new hat. Or, he would think about what he would spend his money on. And so sometimes he would hand me the money back and said, I really don't feel like putting it through the bank. Can I just use it for play on the computer? But it was that, I get money, I got to spend money kind of thing. And then so he was about 13 or 14 when he got his first phone. And that was, the texting was, the AABB, kind of texting thing. Our second son didn't have a phone till he was 16. Even though he got a job at 16, I think that's when he got his phone. Our daughter, I'm thinking she was 15 or so, but my youngest one, now he's 8 years younger than the oldest, so that's really the next generation. All his friends had phones in 5th grade. So here he is in 7th grade, and he didn't have a phone. So I said, you have to have a job, because here's the thing, parents. You can hand your child a phone, but you're stuck paying the bill. So even if they get a phone for Christmas, you have a recurring bill. That's the part that I explained to my kids. I can buy you a phone for Christmas. How are you going to pay for the bill? And they'd look at me. I'm like, there's a $30 at that point bill recurring every month. So I told them, you have to have a job in order to pay that bill. I can give you the phone all you want, but there's going to be nothing that you can do with it unless you can pay the bill. So he was 13 or going on 13. He really wanted a phone. And, who's going to hire a 13-year-old? Well, he's a soccer player. So he got certified. They were short on soccer refs. He got certified at age 12. They were like, okay, you're almost 13. You can do that. And he started reffing little kid league games, soccer games. He would get $20 a game. He was 13 years old. He did tournaments. Sometimes tournaments he would do like 6 games a day in the hot sun in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. But he would make bank. And so then he would be like, can I spend it? I'm like, your bill is coming up, $30 a month. You got to have the money. Otherwise your phone's not going to work. So let's put some of the money towards your phone bill for the next 3 months and then see what you have left. Right. But yeah, that's how they learned. But he was the youngest. He was 13 and he really wanted that phone. And he was, I think, the last one in the carpool that got his phone, but he ended up paying for it.
I know also a lot of parents in our generation, it was a non-negotiable about going to college. And in this house, it was, I didn't force the issue because you and I both are entrepreneurs. And that's something I've tried to get all of my girls to do, is to find something that can be a side hustle for you, right? And it could turn into something that's more permanent. But I remember when one of Kenzie's friends made the declaration that he was going to HVAC school, right? And I was like, that's amazing. That's incredible. Because you and I both worked with a certain particular client that, started with a truck, with a van, and is a multimillionaire now, right? And I don't think he ever went to college. And it's not that I'm against college, but the cost of college at this point, it just doesn't make sense. I just saw yesterday or the day before where Campbell University, I believe, is, in order to go there, their tuition, room, board, books, in and out the door, 1 year, $100,000.
I saw something that's now passed. Yeah.
So
that's crazy.
That is insane. And, you and I sit in enough Facebook job, marketing groups where the people that are in marketing that are saying like, they're going on hundreds of interviews. So the job market is not supporting it. And it just, in our industry alone, it is definitely not the salary that as we all know, we are all living it. Salaries have not kept pace with the cost of living. And it is hard for me to justify telling someone, go ahead and get yourself $250,000 in debt for a degree, and good luck getting a salary maybe around 50 grand. These kids are going to absolutely be drowning in debt the rest of their lives. We are setting these kids up for failure and a very bad financial demise by insisting that they all go to college. And instead, we need to be applauding these kids that want to go to trade school. You know what's great about trade school? You know what's great about being a plumber or an HVAC or an electrician? When your shift is done, you're done. You go home, you have a nice burger and fries with your family or whatever it is that you do when you get off. You go for a run, whatever. You're done. The stress on those jobs is just nothing compared to the stress of the court. I'm going to stop.
Yeah. So let me say that I also don't have a college degree. like you, didn't go to college. Remember, I got married young. My husband was still in college, and he was getting an undergrad degree. And then by the time we started having kids, he got his master's. So supported him through 2 degrees. And so the expectation on his end was, yes, you go to college, but we're not paying for it, which is kind of not the best way to do that. Now, we were lucky, and South Carolina is one of maybe 2, 3 states where they give scholarships, state scholarships based on merit, not on income, which was very fortunate for my oldest children. They all got the highest level scholarship from the state. They qualified because they were in the top 6% or 5% of their class in the high school that they were in. So my daughter got additional scholarships, so she basically had a free ride, including cost of living. My son got a free ride for the school part and the books part, but he had to pay his own cost of living. That's why he had to work and pay his own rent and everything. So that was lucky. My youngest, now we're in Vermont, that's a whole different ballgame. We are supporting him by allowing him to live at home for 4 years, right? So he doesn't have the cost of living to pay for because the other kids had left by then, but he has to pay for his own college. So it's about $5,000-6,000 a semester, and he has to come up with that money. Now he saved money. He took a little loan. He pays for, there's not a whole lot of books at what he's studying. So there's a lot of online stuff. We did have to purchase a new car because he's a commuter and his car broke down. So we purchased a car that's in our name, obviously our car, but he has to put his own gas in it. And so he had a chance to potentially be an RA and live on campus. But he's like, yeah, but then I have to buy the food package. And that's another $2,000 a semester. And he's like, if I live at home, yeah, I have a commute, but, all that is free. So he's doing the math on all of that. Right. And he found a great food hack. All of his friends, it's a very small college, all of his friends have the, what do you call the food package? What do you call that?
Meal plan.
The dorm meal plan. They call it food package. It's the same thing. Meal plan. They all have a meal plan, and they all get, I think, 20 or 30 guest passes. So he is the beneficiary of every single one of their guest passes. So because otherwise he would have to pay it himself. So he's being frugal with his money because it's his money. If it was my money and I would be buying the meal plan, that's the difference, right? Yep. So yeah, he does live at home. I do his laundry, but he does his own cooking.
You do his laundry?
I do his laundry. Yeah. He has a 45-minute commute each way.
You're doing it to make his life easier.
I'm doing it to make his life easier. He does his own cooking because I'm vegan and he eats steak. So he does his own cooking. He does his own bedding. Like what I say is I do his laundry, but he has to strip his own bed and he has to make his own bed. I put it in a laundry machine. So I'm helping him that way.
Hear what actual AI-generated voices are saying about the Wheeler's Dog podcast.
It can be amusing.
It's better than going to the dentist.
The award-winning Wheeler's Dog podcast can be found just about anywhere that you get podcasts.
Listening to Eugene is better than looking at Eugene.
Let's put it this way. The Wheeler's Dog podcast is better than having your leg broken by a loan shark.
If AI-generated voices are saying that about the Wheeler's Dog podcast, shouldn't you be a listener too?
Again, I'm going to throw out the disclaimer. I am not Mom of the Year. I am not the world's greatest parent in the world. My entire objective with my parenting career was to produce functioning young adults into the world, right? However, something, I don't know if you see it with your kids' friends, but something that I saw with the girls' friends is that these kids have no street smarts. They have very little common sense. And listening to you talk about your son with his, going through the rationalization of, if I do this, then that, and this, then that, that's making him very street smart. That's common sense. And so many, I love Gen Z, and there's so many great things about them, that there are certain things about them that make me flippin' crazy. And the fact that the lack of street smarts and common sense is one of them, and the lack of sense of urgency is another one. Maybe it's just because I'm like, little Tasmanian devil, and I'm, just like go, 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 go all the time. But sometimes the lack of sense of urgency makes me crazy. But by making our kids do things like their own laundry, their own cooking. I might have bought the car, but you have to pay X. Like, I think for my girls, I said, you have to pay me $150 a month, right? And that was partially for the car, the maintenance, and the insurance, right? I'm like, I can't offset this entire thing. I'm not going to offset this, because when you get out there into the world and you buy your own car, you're going to have these hard costs as well. You may as well get used to understanding that if I have a car, I'm going to have this, this, and this. If I have a phone, I'm going to have this, this, and this. If I have a credit card, I'm going to have this, this, and this. And so, and some of their friends, clueless, 100% clueless.
Yeah, I saw that a lot. I drove a lot of carpool, and, if you have young children and you're listening to Conversations on the Rocks, drive carpool. You get all the secrets.
You get all the tea. They spill all the tea.
You get all the tea. But yeah, I was in the carpool with a 13-year-old who, that was the conversation. She got a phone for her birthday and she was all excited. And I say, so you got the phone for your birthday? And she told us this was, a long time ago, but it was a lot of money. And, I'm like, who's going to pay for the phone? She goes, well, I got it. I'm like, no, there's going to be a bill. Who's going to pay for it? And she just didn't understand. And you're not doing your kids a service if you don't explain these things, that there's a bill that goes with that. And there's a bill for insurance. Insurance goes up. I can say that my youngest son had his driver's license for 4 days and got his first speeding ticket. This is the first and only speeding ticket. But the insurance was going to go up, and we made him pay the difference, because we had said, again, you need your car for school. He was, driving 45 minutes to the high school at that point, because we live pretty remote. So college is 45 minutes, but high school was also 45 minutes. And we said, if you get another ticket and you can't drive, you're taking the bus.
Right.
You're going back on the bus.
Can I interrupt you real quick and say something?
Yeah.
You're nice, because the first speeding ticket that the oldest got, I wasn't taking the insurance hit. I told her, I said, you've got to pay $300 for an attorney to get it taken care of.
Oh, no. He ended up paying the difference of the insurance.
Yeah.
So the insurance went up. So he had to pay the difference. Yeah.
Yeah. I was like, I'm not taking a hit.
We
on
weren't
that.
being nice. No. We weren't being nice. He had to pay that. So I think that our kids have realized pretty early on that's how we do it. But when we see our kids struggle, we say it over and over. If you need something, you need to open your mouth. When I go visit my children, the weekend's on me. I fly over to live in South Carolina. I take them to dinner. I buy them groceries. I went for Christmas. My daughter didn't have a Christmas tree. I went 2 weeks before Christmas. I'm like, let's go to Home Depot. We got a Christmas tree because it was our first house. We got everything, got the lights. Like, if I see something and I'm there, I'm buying it. I can, right? And that's a gift.
It is,
and
those are soft costs. I call those the soft costs. And here's a funny question. So when you take your kids grocery shopping, when you go visit them, see, my kids are smart. They are good shoppers. Like, I taught my kids early on to go shopping for clothes at places like Plato's Closet, which is consignment.
Yes, we do the same thing. Yep, do the same thing.
And they know that store brand is the same as blah, blah, blah. But I swear to you, every time I take them shopping, all of a sudden, there's no such thing as generic. It's all... And I'm like, do you buy that? Do you buy major brands when on your money, or is it? And I don't say anything. I just think it's funny. It's always an observation. We have probably about 7-10 minutes left on this. I want to touch on something else about this generation, and I particularly noticed it with my middle. So the 2019 class of 2019 is the emotional and mental issues. Mm-hmm. There are, like I said, I mean, the oldest, she had it, and the youngest, they had it. But for some reason, again, it seemed like that middle class at 2019, all of these kids had anxiety. They had depression. Yep. They had some kind of neurological something. What's your experience with that?
100% same. I've got one class of 2018 and same. Yeah.
Do you think it's the social media? Do you think it's the peer pressure? Do you think or is it because they didn't put that? We had it, but it wasn't necessarily, obviously, back in the 60s and 70s, you didn't talk about things like that. That's one of the things that I do love about this generation too, is they will talk to you. They have no shame in talking about things of that nature. They're very fluid.
I think they're the first. They're not the generation that grew up with it. They weren't 2 years old and holding iPads, right? So they're a generation that still remembers doing hopscotch outside, my children did do that. The first computer they had, or play computers, probably they were like 8, 9, we had a PlayStation, and, then we had, I don't even know all the systems, but they really didn't get a phone till later. So on social media, it just came into play after that. I also told them you have to be 13 anyway. But I think they didn't know how to deal with it. We as parents, we didn't grow up with it. So the parents of that generation weren't educated on social media. On, like, kids go to school, they get sex ed. You're supposed to do this at home, parents, but, a lot of kids learn everything from school. Again, in the carpool, you'll learn all kinds of stuff about that they had sex ed, and what they learned, and what the boys learned versus the girls, and what the boys didn't listen to versus the girls, which is also very interesting. But there's been no social media education, not for their parents. The parents didn't know how to guide the children. And then,
I did that for years, coaching parents.
You did that. You taught that. Yeah.
For that exact reason.
Right. And so, one of the things we ran into was my daughter didn't want to be in pictures. She was very self-conscious, and we lived in Myrtle Beach. So there was a lot of pictures of half-naked girls because you're in your bathing suit. And she would go to a party and she would say, I don't want to be in the picture. And they're like, oh, it's okay. We won't post it. She wouldn't even leave the premises, and it would be on Instagram. And I would ask her, do you want me to ask your friend to take it down? The friend wouldn't take it down. If I go to the parents like it's her phone.
Right.
It's her thing. And we don't do that anymore. I think now we're educated to say, you need to have consent. People know about consent, about, you don't post pictures that you don't have permission. But that was it was all so new.
Yeah.
We didn't know. My son in 5th grade was that first generation at elementary school. They all got iPads. It was like and they go to school like middle of August. And I walk into the library at the end of the day, and the librarian, if I could have seen, like, her hair was standing up, and she was like, first day of school. And she's like, oh, I said, what happened? She goes, the 5th graders figured out that there's a camera on the iPad.
Oh my God.
And they didn't count for it because they didn't know what kids would do. What do kids do in 5th grade with cameras on the iPad?
Right.
Can only imagine what happened that first day. It was horrible. It was just, she's putting tape over all of the cameras, and then they had to make up a policy. So I think it's that generation of parents and teachers who didn't know to guide these kids, and they made up the rules after all the things went wrong.
Right. Yeah.
I really think that's what happened. Everything went wrong.
It was reactive.
Kids got anxiety. It was reactive.
It was all
that's a good
reactive
way
and
to
not
say
proactive,
it.
right? But it could not have been proactive because they didn't know what they were dealing with.
Right.
And I remember when I would do these courses for parents, and I would go, they would bring me into the schools, right? And how many, especially again, 2017, oldest kid, how many of their parents, the parents. Other parents were like, oh, my kids would never do that. I'm like, yeah, they are, because I see them. I see their fun stuff.
Yes.
I know.
Yep.
Don't tell me your kids aren't. I'm not going to rat your kid out, but yeah, they are there. And, so many parents would just and adults, let's just say adults, were burying their heads in the ground over the social media piece of it. And that's when the damage happened.
Yep. I agree. And I think that's really and the gist of it. And then the younger generation, I think by that time, I was more fluent in social media, obviously, and I knew where to set the boundaries, and I knew to say, this is acceptable, this is not acceptable. But the interesting part is, I don't know how your kids are, but none of my 4 kids want to be on it. They consume it, but they will not post, not one of them.
I think that's very common. In kind of what we talk about, the dark social, not the dark web, dark social, is they want to share things, but they share it with a very small group. They share it with their friends. They're not posting.
Yep.
They're not posting the way our generation does and the way the boomers are. Because now which is probably the reason why Snapchat was so popular and is so popular with them.
It's still,
is because they share amongst their little circle. They probably have, 50, side chats going on with all of their different groups of friends. And, I have found that that's kind of what I do now, more so with my friends. I don't post nearly as much as I used to. well, I think you and I both know why. It's because we live and breathe it. So by the time I'm like, no, I'll scroll through it. I'll consume it in little bits, but beyond that, not much. So we're going to get ready to wrap up. What kind of let's dole out a little bit of advice here. Let's say that we've got some millennial parents whose kids are, because a lot of these lessons you really need to be doing from the beginning. And again, we're not parenting experts. We're just parents that have, gone through the ringer. These hard skills that they are not learning really need to be taught. Like you just said, you're not doing your kids any favor. And it's really hard to retroactively do it. I thought I had done a really good job with my kids as far as personal finance. Last month I did, as I call it, the winter mom tour. And I literally took number 2 and number 1 physical financial journals. Here is your budget planner, because they are both all over the place. I'm like, if you don't get this in check now, you are going to be suffering big time. And life is too expensive for you to be, winging it, flying by the seat of your pants when it comes to money. I was like, because you make good money, but you don't make enough money to live right now. And, my oldest went and got a second job. It finally sunk into her that if she wants to have the kind of life that she wants to have, and that, when I say that, I'm talking about just going out with her friends, because she lives in D.C. It's one of the most expensive cities in the United States. She had to get a second job.
Yeah. Yeah. My son has 2 jobs, my oldest son. Any advice? I would say talk to your kids, have conversations. We, as a parent, I grew up in the Netherlands where everything is very, I'm not going to say rigid, but everything is on time. We are the country. If you say you're going to show up at 5, you call somebody if it's 5:01 and you're late. Okay. You're late, 5:01. So everything is scheduled. I guess that's a good way to say it, including what happens in school, how you learn. Like every single kindergartner in the Netherlands learns how to tie their shoes. You can't graduate kindergarten until you've done that. That's just part of what you do. In 5th grade or 6th grade, they do that. Before you go to middle school, everybody rides their bikes. You have to go through not traffic court, but like traffic lessons. And you go in a whole class, you all wear this little vest and you go into traffic and you learn how to bike from your little neighborhood into the big city, because you'll be expected to do that on your own. But everybody learns at the same time. And that's kind of, on top of that, everybody is kind of on the same schedule. All daycares in the Netherlands close at 6:00.
Okay.
They all close. So nobody works late because you can't get your kid from daycare. Most people work 32 hours or less, especially if they're parents. That's considered a full-time job. So most parents are off on Wednesdays, because Wednesday's a half-day school in all of the Netherlands. So because everything is so scheduled, everybody eats dinner between 5:30 and 6, and I stuck with that. I would have Tupperware parties. Remember those?
Yes, I do.
And I would schedule mine at 7:00 at night, and I would have the same for years. I have the same Tupperware lady, and the first couple times she would come, she'd like, "I thought you had kids." I'm like, "Yeah, I have 4. They're asleep." She would walk in at 6:45.
Oh my God!
And she'd be looking at me like, "What?" I said, "We eat dinner at 5:30. 6:00 is bath. By 6:30, you're in your pajamas and we're reading books. By 7:10, the doors are closed." Now, whether you go to sleep or not, most of the time they go to sleep. Of course, they were up at 5 or 5:30 a.m. and they didn't nap, but I would have my evening to myself. And so that schedule really worked well for me. So sticking to a schedule, having dinner together every night and talking about your day. If that's not possible, have breakfast every morning, or, have tea after they come from school. But those rituals are really important.
And here's a big one too for younger parents. Car time is valuable conversation time, because you're you're sitting next to each other. You're staring probably straight out of a dashboard, and some of the most awkward and uncomfortable conversations happen in the car because you're not having that direct eye-to-eye contact. So take advantage of car time too.
Yeah. Whether it's a carpool or just driving your kids to a soccer or whatever, after school activity, really, really important. And take the trips. I mean, I flew all over the world with our 4 kids, sometimes by myself, sometimes with my husband. I went to Europe, 3 planes to get there. Kids are resilient. They can do it. Stay calm. You can do it. And the experience that they had traveling and seeing new things, It's nothing like it. Feed your children every food imaginable. I grew up in a country where every single day we got potatoes, one meatball, a big meatball, and some vegetables. That was dinner every single night. I didn't like anything. I moved to this country. I couldn't even eat pizza. I had never had pizza, didn't like spaghetti, had never had any other cultural food. And I didn't want my kids to be that way. And my husband eats anything. So we'd be at a Thai restaurant and he goes, who wants to eat octopus? And everybody says yes. So I have learned to keep my face straight and look the other way and, not show what I'm thinking, that I'm not eating that. So our children eat anything. Teach them young to eat all the different foods. And kids, do what you do. If you want your kid to be a reader, you have to hold a book in your hand every once in a while.
That's very
true. If you want them to do sports, you have to be active. I would have my kids on the bike. I would push a jogging stroller and I'd take 4 kids with me on a run. They all loved running. They all played sports. They all were active. They're going to do what you do. So you can say all you want, go play outside. But if you never go outside with them, your kids are not going to play outside. I'm not saying you play outside all the time, but go sit outside with a book.
Right.
Just be outside with them so they know this is a time to be outside. I learned that very early on. I was a nanny for a lot of years, and teaching a child to play, you can model some of the play that you want. And then I would say the best trick in the book is, I got to go to the bathroom. I'll be right back. And then they would continue play. And then they'd look for me. I'd come back and I'm like, oh, this is great. We play for 5 minutes. I go, oh, I'm going to peel the potatoes. Come right back, And so I would leave them longer and longer with their play. But you have to model the behavior that you want them to have. So if you have kids who don't play, it's because you didn't model it. So if your kids don't do sports, it's because you didn't show it. If you have kids who don't read, it's because you're not reading.
Right.
Pick up a book, take them to the library. I mean, those are just simple things, but think about what you're doing. Your kids are going to be doing the same thing. If you're on your phone all day,
so are they.
You know what they're doing. Yeah. I think that's the best advice I can give
And it's
anybody.
true. And it goes both ways, both good and bad. So bad habits, show them bad habits, they're going to take on them. Show them the good ones, and they're going to do that too. Thank you so much for this time. I knew we were going to have a good conversation because, like I said, we were both very like-minded. And I think we're both pretty damn awesome parents.
I think so too.
So far.
Yes.
But I do appreciate it. And everybody out there, I appreciate you taking the time to listen. And until next time, have a wonderful life. As the saying goes, you don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. And that's a wrap for this week's episode. A big thanks to my guests for sharing their story and to you for listening. Don't forget to share the show with your friends and spread the words. And if you'd like to be a guest on the show, the link is in the show notes. Till next time, cheers.